Juanita. I'm an intern here at Tampa Sports Academy. I go to school at Gann University, and my major is sports and exercise science. For today, my topic, I chose rehabilitation of athletes following knee joint meniscus injuries. Okay. So, a little overview about the knee. It's the largest joint in the human body. Right here we have the fibia, we have the femur and the tibia. In between we have two types of cartilages. We have the articular and the meniscus. So the meniscus is a fibrocartilage structure. It carries type 1 cartilage and also has a triangular cross-section. The lateral meniscus, if we're looking at it in this way, this is going to be at the right side, the lateral meniscus, it covers 84% of the lateral tibial plateau. The lateral meniscus is actually more mobile than the medial meniscus, and it's less prone to tear, except when the ACL is injured. The medial meniscus covers 64% of the medial tibial plateau. I'm going to go over the meniscus and everything about it so you guys have more understanding of the tears. Okay. So next I'm going to go over the function. The main function of the meniscus is short shock absorption, load sharing, and joint stability. Okay, so here is an actual picture of a meniscus tear. So studies have shown that there is a 10 to 30% of blood supply in the medial, and there is a 10 to 25% of blood supply in the lateral. So vascularity is very important in the meniscus because it allows the cartilage itself to repair. So as you can see right here, there is a red zone and there is a white zone. The red zone has a rich blood supply, so if there is a tear in the red zone, it's more likely to repair and heal. Versus if there is a tear in the white zone, it's not going to heal. Okay. So next, yes, the vascularity is very important. It's a very essential component to the potential to repair. Okay. So meniscus tears. Meniscus tears can occur to everybody. We have acute tears. Now this is more popular, more common in athletes, simply because of the twisting, jumping, change of direction. So sports like basketball, tennis, volleyball, skiing, even track, they're more prone to these tears. Degenerative tears are more for the older adults, just because over time as we age, our body naturally goes through that degenerative process. So over time and overuse of the joint. Okay, and then we have the symptoms of the meniscal injury. Over here we have the pain is on the medial or lateral side of the knee, and then of course we have the mechanical symptoms of locking, clicking, and swelling. Okay, so treating a meniscus really depends on the severity of the injury, also the location, the age of the person who was injured. So normally the initial response of a physical therapist is not surgery, it's actually RICE. We know that as rest, ice, compress, elevate. And of course the non-steroidal, anti-inflammatory, and if there's any more symptoms, of course that cortisone injection. So this is more of a conservative approach. Okay, so after that, let's say the athlete isn't progressing from this approach, the next step is a partial meniscectomy, which is an excision of the tear. And this right here is pretty much when the surgeon will go in and very gently shave or cut the meniscus. And the surgeon needs to be very careful because this process right here is high risk for arthritis, fun fact. And return to sports 7 to 6 weeks. Next we have the meniscus repair. So the meniscus repair, excuse me, I forgot one point. Ooh. So the goal here, So sorry. The goal here is to reduce swelling, and over time, it will heal by itself. Okay. With the meniscus repair, going back, this is about 80 to 87% of athletes returning to their sport. Next is the meniscal transplant, and this is when the athlete has already had a meniscus I can't say that word, meniscectomy. So this right here is about 60 to 80% of athletes returning to their sport as well. And it's very common for it to tear again. Okay, so physical therapists, they are the experts of movement. They improve life through hands-on care, patient education, as well as prescribing movements. Their goal is to help heal the tear, as well as strengthen the patient through movements. So initially, there's a period of restricted knee flexion, especially during those weight-bearing activities. So during physical activity, there are specific time frames that are given to protect the healing tissue. Next, the general time frames that are individualized for that person. So physical therapy can range from 4 to 6 weeks or 4 to 8 weeks. Everybody progresses on their own rate, and that depends on their age, the severity of the injury, the location, and as well as rehabilitation compliance. Okay. So next, physical therapy. It is divided into 3 phases. And the first phase, as you can see, the appointments I have down is only going to be once a week. Right here, the main goal is to reduce swelling and to restore leg control. Precautions: no knee flexion past 90. Here are some range of motion exercises. We have heel slides, cone hangs, wall slides, and for cardio, really any upper body, we're trying to reduce, minimize any stress on that leg. And then of course, to progress to the next phase, if the patient has no pain and no swelling, then they'll move on to phase 2. Now phase 2, the difference here is our progression and using single leg stand control, normalized walking, pain-free functional movements, and of course, no forced flexion with passive range of motion, weight-bearing activities. So now we're gonna load a little bit more weight to those legs, okay? Non-impact balance, proprioceptive drills, strengthening, muscle imbalance, non-impact endurance for cardiovascular. We can do like the stationary bike, swimming, something light. So progression would be normalized walking on any surfaces, whether it be going up concrete, going up the stairs, a turf, a yoga mat. Different forces that apply as we're stepping down and it's coming back up. Okay. Oops, surprise. Okay, so phase 3. It's right here, once every 1 to 2 weeks. The main goal is now we're gonna apply sports specific. So our tennis player, we're gonna have them play with the racket. We're gonna have them train with the racket, just doing single leg hops, ski hops that will apply to their sport. Precautions: post-activity swelling, we just want to make sure that they can get through the workout, that they can do these movements. Therapeutic, we have strength control drills, movement control exercises, single leg planes, low high velocity, and that's how we're gonna progress. Is we're gonna go from single leg to both, low speeds, high speeds. Now we're gonna apply more to their sport and make our way back into return to play, return to work. Okay, cardiovascular exercise, replicate the sport-specific energy demands. So perfect example, if a football player was ready to run, we'd have him go try a pair of shoes. parachutes. That way they can practice on exploding and loading that leg, launching forward. Okay, and then return to sport, any dynamic muscular control, multiple plane, and of course, pain-free and no swelling. Okay. So next I have an example. So if you guys don't know, Derrick Rose, he is known as like the youngest MVP. He is also known as the man of glass as well. He's been on teams like the New York Knicks, Chicago Bulls, and yeah. So that's a little fun facts about him. It's a nice picture. And then here's a couple of pictures of him being injured. So sad. So Derrick Rose, he's been getting injured since high school, and studies say that it's his loading, it's his jumping and landing techniques in high school where he injured his wrist, injured his ankle, that carried on to the NBA, and it really, his first NBA game, he had to sit out because of an injury. And it got worse when he injured his ACL in 2012 and then injured his meniscus in playing the Trailblazers. So I brought him up because although he's had 18 surgeries and missed out on 237 games, he just re-signed for the New York Knicks in August of 2021, of this year. So can athletes go back to sports? Yes. Because it depends on the area of the tear, it depends on the severity. Like I said, red zone, white zone, if there's blood supply, and also the compliance. An athlete like Derrick Rose has the champion mindset to be the best, and that therefore his compliance to rehabilitation led him to re-signing with the New York Knicks. So, yes. Next, my second to last slide is how to prevent a meniscus tear. So like we do before we train, we have our dynamic stretching, our dynamic warm-up, and that is to prevent injuries, get the body warm, and just to more blood flowing to the muscles. Next, also we need to strengthen the muscles that support the knee to stabilize. Next, also prioritize your recovery. Some of us don't have an off switch, but that's what we need to do. We eat to make gains, we rest to make gains, and we train to create a stimulus. Our recovery is our ability to make gains. So yes. And last, use proper gear. Who runs in Converses? No. Who runs in Vans? Get yourself some nice shoes from Fitness, get some Brooks, some Asics, something that's gonna support your knee. At the end of the day, it's very important on what you walk on. And then last, proper technique, body mechanics as you engage in your physical activities. And here are my references, some of them. I couldn't fit them all, but yeah, thank you. Any questions?
If you want to go.
No, go ahead.
So I know you mentioned they spoke about his jumping mechanics as being kind of potentially why he was having so many issues with his meniscus. Are there any other research that you came across in markers that you could look for in athletes, when you're doing an initial evaluation, oh, this is something we need to work on and fix because that does make you more susceptible to this meniscus tear?
Right, so as I was talking,
Jordan,
excuse me. Yeah, so we actually shared this together, and I found this in my studies, is that a lot of times when athletes are doing their strength and conditioning, the amount of weight and training that they implement, it then decreases their velocity or their ability to explode, and therefore it hinders them to perform to their optimal performance. For example, like Eddie Hall, who is the world's strongest man, heaviest log press, and now he's doing boxing. It doesn't match his body composition, and at the end of it, it's not right for his, I don't want to say it's right for his body, but his training style previously, it doesn't correlate together, and that's why so many people are getting injured. And I think it's also why basketball players have less injuries in the meniscus versus football players. Because football players train heavy weights versus basketball players, it's more of resistant bands, more sprinting, running, and like high repetition. Basketball players train heavier for explosion.
I had a question on like the meniscus shaving.
Yes.
So with that, what's the thought behind that, and not just trying to like go in and fully repair it?
Okay. Not to fully repair. Well, it depends. Like I said, it depends on the blood supply.
Okay.
So normally, if it's a shaving, then that would be in the white zone because it's avascular. If there was a tear in the red zone, there wouldn't need to be a shave. There wouldn't need to be cut because of the blood supply. That the meniscus, the cartilage, has the ability to repair itself.
I have a couple of questions. How many more references do you have?
If I can pull this up on my paper.
I'm being picky here, but that's what I do.
So some of this is on my paper, and then my PowerPoint is not on my paper. So yeah.
So, how many altogether?
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh wait, hold on. Some of these are double.
Yeah, duplicate, right?
Yes.
So a couple things I'm looking at here, just because good questions asked already, but the references, what year and how many? I see the most current one right there is 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So you have 93, 93,
yeah,
82.
these are, right here is the science of the meniscus repair after rehabilitation.
And then the others that aren't listed there?
Right here I have 2016 influence on surgery, timing, muscle, or meniscus recovery, muscle torque. ACL, this one right here is 2017,
Okay.
and then 2019. Yes, sir. Oh, sorry. Yes.
And I want to explain why I asked that question is because to us in the audience that we're looking at this are going right away, anybody that when you go to grad school, we look at the references, go, they're no longer valued because they're so old. They're not of value because this is a new science. So exercise science, honestly, I was like in one of the first classes in my undergrad in the early 90s, I'm not kidding you. If I taught what you guys are being learned now, I'd be kicked out because of the advancements in this career.
Makes sense.
So when I look at a reference from 1982, and they've been cutting knees forever, but when I look at a reference like from there, I go, ooh, that can't be good because it's no longer valid. If it's a foundational stuff, these are the things that you learn in your mouth, more in your graduate degree than anything. But if it's foundational and that never changes, like the structure of the knee, we call it the same thing we did in 1982, right? But the repairs and the rehab for that are night and day, absolutely. You look at a surgery from 1982, and that would be scar from femur, from top of hip, basically all the way down to the shin. So things have changed drastically. And when I look at that, I go, right away, how valid is this information? So you have to be very careful about that. So if anything, for a little life lesson here, I would have listed the other ones from 2016, 17, 18, 19, and keep this in mind going forward for both of you. We had a great strength coach there. We said 5 5s. No more than 5 years old, because in this science, that is no longer relevant, unless, again, it's foundational. And then 5 good, high-quality references. So just something to stick with you. Hopefully
Yeah, I
you use that
appreciate that so
going
much.
forward, because some of them are a little shaky. American Journal of Sports Medicine, can't lose. That's always a good one. But just keep that in mind, okay? Some of the information was really good, I thought.